Thanks. Why don't we start collecting a few questions? Why don't we take 2 questions, and then we'll come back to George,
Sure.
and then 2 more. So please go ahead.
Hello, I'm a fellow Greek, and I think everybody here is treating you much too well. I think that everybody seems to agree with you, and I'm kind of puzzled by that. I think you almost present yourself as somebody you are part of a Greek dynasty. Your grandfather was prime minister, your father was prime minister, then you became prime minister. And you only talk about the reform after 2008. But something went terribly wrong in Greece during maybe from 74 to 2008. Maybe we worked very hard, long hours, but we're very unproductive. The private sector sort of declined over a long period of time. The public sector came and offered all these jobs and bankrupted the country. And you sort of want to Europeanize the problem. But can't you tell us sort of a little bit of a mea culpa first in saying we really screwed up? I mean, as a Greek, I feel like I'm almost ashamed of what happened. And you're there and saying, you talk about collaboration versus blah, blah, blah. I think there's a lot of empty rhetoric. I think from 2008, maybe you did very good work, but we did something terribly wrong. And just talk about Northern Europe and Southern Europe, it's true. It's different. There's different cultures. I think your doctors, our doctors, are always gaming the system. But I think if you go to Germany or if you go to Denmark, they are not. They'll say, I'll prescribe the generic drug because it's cheaper, whereas the Greek guy does the other way. So we did something very wrong. We all took advantage of this sort of democracy, and you should acknowledge it.
Thank you very much. I think we'll let you respond to that before we move on.
Okay, thank you. No, first of all, I don't disagree with you that we did screw up in Greece at different times. And that's what I said in the beginning. I said this was not that we actually just overspent. You know, we didn't, it was, I lived in Sweden, as I mentioned. You know, we didn't overspend in, let's say, childcare, like maybe in Sweden they might overspend in childcare and then have to cut the budget. There was a lot of waste, and there was a lot of corruption. And I said this, and I've been accused, even in Greece, by saying that there's been corruption in Greece. But I said that because I want to change it. That's why I said it. I didn't want to hide it. And I don't think we could, even if somebody wanted to. But there are ways of changing it. I said one way was, I showed, one was, the computerization of prescriptions. The other was, they're just putting everything online, all the expenditures online, e-procurements. Even our laws, we would have a sort of a wiki procedure of deliberation. These were reforms we started, or the way we picked people for the public sector, absolute meritocracy, even at the political level for the first time, and this was around the world a first. We had an open announcement for people to come in for highly political positions. We had, for 88 positions, we had 28,000 applications. Usually just the party comes in, puts in their party people. So we really started making changes. What I'm unhappy about is that the austerity has, in a sense, been the real pain, and this has slowed down the reforms. I was talking to Gerhard Schröder, the former Chancellor of Germany, and he said to me, and he said this publicly also, he said he could not have done both reform and austerity at the same time. We were asked to do both. So we do have our responsibilities. I don't say that. However, there are other responsibilities too inside the European Union which are structural. I would say that the fact that we came into the European Union, we came into the euro, we were given subsidies over these years, we didn't look at some of the major problems we had in our economy. Our agriculture should be the most competitive in the world. This Mediterranean diet is a brand name. Yet we got subsidies to throw away our produce. Now that's a Greek problem, but it's also a European problem. Now, so yes, we need to live up to the reforms, and the Greek people all need to. Each one of us, in his or her way, needs to take responsibility for moving the country forward. It's easy to scapegoat. It's easy to see, the outside to say, oh, the Germans or the IMF and so on. I said one time to in the parliament, I said, well, if it's the IMF that's the problem, why don't we just throw them into the Aegean and our problems will be solved. So it's easy to scapegoat, but we do have to see the European problems too. Just one thing on the dynasty. I've heard this, and thank you for the question. First of all, dynasties usually are not elected. I've been elected always in my life, democratically. I fought in my party to make changes also. I said, when I was up for election as leader of my party, I said, I will not run unless we change the constitution of the party and make it an open primary. 1 million people came to vote in a country of 11 million. I was elected twice with this process. But also, just looking back, there are families and families. Just so happened my grandfather in his life was exiled 6 times or jailed 6 times in his life fighting for democracy. He was going to be executed in the 20s, lucky to live, because of his democratic views. My father also, twice in his life. So it's a fight for democracy. It's not really a royal dynasty.
Thanks. All right, now let's